Hello and welcome. This is Crystal Hill, CEO of Hille House Publishing, here today with a transformational book writing podcast where we're going to share stories and tips and hiccups and tools from authors who have walked that path and who are on their journey. And today I have with me the beautiful Daniela Schosch, who is coming all the way from Mallorca. Welcome, Daniela.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. So nice to be here.
Yes, I'm very excited to have a conversation with you because you're a mindset coach for women approaching menopause, and you're currently in the Solo Book Incubator writing your book. So you're in that
Yes.
experience right now. Now, I'm
Yes.
really curious. I speak with so many people who are saying, I've been wanting to write my book for years and years and years. Like, how long have you been wanting to write a book before you actually said yes to it? And what was that moment that made you say it's now?
Oh, wow. You know what? I actually wrote a list of what I wanted to become when I was 18 years old, and writer was on there. So I would say for a fairly long time. Yeah, it's kind of been in and
Yes.
out of my mind, but yeah, as it goes. I've always been writing. I was writing some articles. I was a contributing writer, but the book always felt like something I'm going to do one day.
Mm-hmm.
And then what got me started was actually the multi-author book, to be honest. When I was introduced to you through our mutual friend, and she was telling me about the multi-author book, I suddenly thought, like, you know what? Just writing a chapter feels so much less daunting. That feels so much more feasible. And then knowing I would be doing it in a container, I would have some guidance. I thought, you know what? I can do this.
Mm. Yeah, so you got
And
the taste, you got the confidence, and that's when you thought, okay, I'm doing this. And what about the topic? Has the topic changed? Like, I remember too, like for me, I had the same thing. I think I was 10 and writing was on my list of things that I was going to be when I grow up. There was about 5 of
Mhm.
them. But it was, when did this dream of becoming a writer and this topic that you're now writing about, when did that clarify for you? Let's say, okay, I feel like I can write a whole book on this, and we'll dive into what your topic is and what your book is
Mhm.
about in a minute.
Well, so with the multi-author book, first I caught the bug because I thought, like, oh, this is actually quite exciting. I love the writing process. And then I think when I said writer, when I was 18 years old, I was probably more thinking about novels.
Mm-hmm.
But in that book and in that chapter, I suddenly thought, well, there's so much power in sharing my story as well, as a motivational story, or as just being vulnerable and sharing what's been going on in my life, because I think there's this universality of what we're going through when we hit difficult times. And I think that's what got me then to this book as well, saying, there's so many things that I've experienced, and I would love to be able to share and help people that are going through the same thing. And it doesn't have to be, the novel might still happen, who knows, but it's more kind of sharing and also putting all of my work into it, all of my coaching experience and experiences with my clients. So that started to feel quite exciting as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about your book. What is it called, and what is the core theme that you've decided on?
Yeah, so the book is called Wiser, Hotter, Stronger: Embracing the Heat and Heart of Menopause. So it's around menopause and perimenopause. And it's more looking at the emotional and mental effects that menopause has on us. So I'm not a doctor. I'm a nutritionist, so I know a little bit about nutrition and menopause and the connection there. But I'm most and foremost, I'm a coach, right? So it's about that transition that we're going through. I think it's a huge life transition, right, for women when we go through menopause, or especially also perimenopause, when things start to change and happen. So I want to look at all the effects it has on your emotions, your identity, your purpose in life, your connection to yourself, to your body, the grief we experience with the loss of fertility, the change of identity as women when that happens. It might also coincide with, empty nester. Your children might be growing up and leaving the house. You might have to care for aging parents. So I feel like there is so much going on at this moment in life. And I think that's what I hear from a lot of clients. Like, I don't even recognize my life anymore. I don't recognize myself. And like my whole life is like a big, huge transformation and transition that you can easily get lost in.
So the core premise really is about, this transition, helping women to transition with more ease and finding themselves again in their that rediscovery, right? It's about the
Exactly.
rediscovery of, well, who even am I?
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed witnessing your journey and your process, because we've been looking a lot at the hero's or heroine's journey as well. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and how your life experience, especially in terms of these transitions, these life transitions and finding ourselves, how that is like a layer, an additional layer on top of this menopause theme, because your book is so rich, it is so deep, it has so many layers. I'd love you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I was looking at the hero's journey and I was trying to see how it corresponds to my experiences, and something just didn't quite fit. And then I remembered that the heroine's journey, by the famous book that says, well, for women, the journey is slightly different. And I think the difference is we recognize more the cyclical growth, a lot of like more internal transformation. The topic is much more around the identification with the feminine and the masculine, and how do you balance that out. It's much more about, or what's also typical for the heroine's journey is kind of having success earlier on, but then having that stage of disillusionment, and that really reflects my journey in my corporate job, for example, being quite successful in my corporate job, but operating in this kind of masculine system, and then really getting to the point where I'm thinking, like, is this really what I want? Is there like, it's I think it's this sense of disappointment almost, in a way, that I think a lot of women experience. Like, okay, I'm here now, but I'm sacrificing a lot. If I have family, for my health, does it really bring me joy? And then that's actually when the journey really starts, of saying, okay, I want to have something that's more meaningful, and kind of going deeper. So that really resonated with me. And I think when we are in this stage of menopause, that also happens, because, as I said, I think it's a lot around identity, or a lot around like, what is our role as women? A lot of it is just, bearing children. And if that possibility falls away, like, who do we become? Does that make sense? I'm not sure I'm answering the question.
Oh yeah, no, it does. It does. Yeah. So what you've been like, the hero's or the heroine's journey is that departure. What happens in the heroine's journey is the cycle within the cycle. So the first identity crisis, in a way, is when you've made the success, but you realize, oh my God, I'm actually not who I am. I'm this masculine role playing, I'm playing a role. I'm not, but who am I? And then that gets repeated. So this is the beginning of the journey, where we're starting to answer the call for a deeper quest, for deeper meaning, for finding ourselves. And then going into menopause is almost like we're starting another cycle of that journey.
Exactly.
where we're at another point of transition in our lives, right? And this is where
Yeah.
you're picking your clients up when they're starting. And this is what I love, the brain fog, I don't love brain fog, but how you're talking about it, and how one of your pillars, because this is the next layer that we're layering into your book, isn't it? We're not only talking about your story, we're not only talking about this in the context of an archetypal hero's or heroine's journey, but we're also bringing in these pillars of your methodology that you've created. So maybe you can share them a little bit. And I love how they fit with this menopause theme, because the one of them is clarity, and that
Yeah,
counteracts the brain fog that we experience.
exactly. So my methodology, which comes from having worked as a coach and an art therapist for quite some time now, for me, it always starts with connection. So connection is my first pillar, like really connecting back to yourself, connecting back to who you are, really also knowing who you are on a soul level. And I think in this point of menopause, as the body changes so much, I think that's very, very important as well, to know or remember who we really are. And I feel like because there's so many changes going through, there's a huge factor in recognizing this disconnect, right? So and then so almost like the connection with me is almost like the foundation, because if you want to have clarity on where you're going, what your North Star is, what this is all about, who do you want to become in this next stage of your life, if there's no connection, it's so much more difficult to answer that question. So the connection for me is the basis for all the other things that follow: the clarity, the courage, the congruence, the creativity as well. Again, is a way to reconnect back. So there's an interplay between all of the pillars in the book, and that fundamental piece of the connection.
Beautiful. What was the biggest personal gift so far that writing this book has given you?
I think it's really digging down into myself, or reconnecting with myself and with my own story. I already had that with the chapter that I was writing, where it was really kind of almost like a catalyst or cathartic process of writing down my story again, really from that, having that different perspective and looking at it in the bigger cycles of life. And with this book, I'm also thinking, because, for example, with menopause, I went into menopause completely oblivious, to be honest. I thought, it's going to be a little bit of hot flashes, and, you get a little bit cranky, and that's it, and you're done. And my experience was so much different. I was like, oh my God. For example, I don't have hot flashes, almost none, but I suffered from terrible insomnia. And I thought, it took me a little bit of research to see, okay, that's a typical symptom of menopause as well. But I thought, we're still not talking about this enough. And I consider myself, like a smart, educated woman. And I thought, how come I had no idea what I was getting into? So I think that's one point. But then also the other thing that I noticed is, like, okay, if you know that those symptoms, like the emotional and the mental and the physical, are connected to perimenopause, it's almost like I see almost like a tendency in blaming everything on that. It's like, oh, this is happening because. So I don't want to stop there either with the awareness. I want to take it a step further and say, there's things you can do about this, right? There's things you can do physically. We know that nutrition has an exercise, there's a huge factor. And my contribution with this book is saying, okay, there's something you can do for your emotional and mental and spiritual well-being as well. And really digging into that and extracting that for myself. What are the tools that really actually help me? How did I get through this time? And to be honest, I'm still in the process in some ways, right? But really thinking about that and getting clear, and then drawing from the different tools I have. So in my book, there's a lot of exercises that I encourage or invite my readers into as well. A lot of them are like based on creativity or journaling, on meditational practices. And it's been really gratifying for me to see what are the tools that I had, really think about what did work for me, and how can we get through this transition with ease and grace and joy, and that sense of excitement, because we are reinventing ourselves in that time, and there is a huge amount of possibility in there as well.
Yes.
which I think is exciting. And it's like, if you look at your teenage kids when they go through puberty, yes, there's a lot of struggles and troubles and pulls and push in different directions. But when I look at my niece, for example, or my nephew, I also think it's also so exciting because they get to decide who they are and they get to define themselves apart from their parents. So I think these moments of crisis, if you want to call them like that, they always have such an opportunity in them. And I want women to see menopause as that as well, as a moment of opportunity to really become more authentic, become stronger, become maybe a little bit more outspoken, really standing up for themselves and really finding a new sense of self.
Exactly. What I loved what you were saying is that whilst you already had your framework with the 5 C's, and then you added, I think you added 2 more in the process
I added 2 more, yeah.
in the process of creating the book.
Yeah.
What I love is that whilst you had all of the tools, what happened is now that all of these tools, they have a home and they sit in a specific, under a specific pillar, right? And this is then going to really inform your flagship program that you're taking clients through. And what I can see happening is that you're able to talk about it in sales calls or even just speaking to clients in a much more authoritative way, because suddenly here's my blueprint. This is what we go through, and these are the things and the tools that worked for me the most. And so I'm distilling everything and I'm giving it to you, so that you don't have to do all the soul searching, because I've already done it for you. So that's what I'm seeing crystallizing and happening here for you, which is so exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so let's talk about the challenges, because, with every birth, with every writing, there's always a challenge. And you can draw on either the previous book that we've done together, the multi-author book, or this one. What were some of the challenges that you've encountered, and what would you say to somebody who is maybe also writing a book or thinking about it, how to overcome this? And the reason I'm asking, what for your tools as well is because, as you said, most people, there's 81% that know they need to write a book and only 1% actually ever get published. So there's this big discrepancy, and it's all in our head because we think, oh my God, it's too hard. So that's why I'd love to hear. Let's talk about these challenges. What have you encountered and how have you overcome it?
So I think in terms of challenges, it's mindset of thinking I can actually really do this. I think it's discipline of dedicating time, and taking the time. I think it's those things, and the clarity as well. I think I also had some ideas in my head, as I said, but I didn't have the clarity of saying, okay, this is the book I want to write. And if it hadn't been for your support, I would not be writing this book today, to be honest. Right? So I think the clarity, knowing what you want to write about, and distilling, and what you say, crystallizing all of your ideas or your approach into something, and yeah, so if I turn it around, and what really helped. So the challenge is also, I think, kind of the writer's block. I have this dialogue in my head sometimes, and then when I sit down and I want to write it down, it's like, oh, that doesn't sound as nice as it sounded in my head.
So what have you done in the past to overcome that?
I always, so when I was the contributing writer for this column in a magazine, I was like last minute writer. I needed the pressure of the deadline to get the writing out. And sometimes I would, the day before I had to submit it, I would sit at my desk until midnight writing, and then reading it through again the next day, doing some editing, and then sending it off. So really having that pressure of like, okay, now you really, 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 really have to do it.
Yes. And so would it happen then as well that it didn't sound as good as you wanted it to, and how as good as it was in your head? Or did the pressure then somehow change your mindset so that it did sound good straight away?
sometimes the pressure then kind of made the things come out that I've been having in my head, the dialogue I've been having in my head. It kind of came out in a way, it's like, okay, yeah, that's actually okay. But that was a 500-word article, right? So that was a different beast than this one. But I think the challenge stays the same. Like, so what I really appreciate about your course, if I may point that out, is really just the accountability of knowing you're showing up every week, you have some homework, and that just gets you into a flow that I know a lot of writers have naturally. That I think you need to be very disciplined, but they hear stories of writers that they write I don't know how many hours every day. And I think with your course, I really got into a rhythm of saying, okay, I'm writing regularly, I'm dedicating regular time to the book. I am showing up on every week on the call. And of course, I want to say, yes, I made some progress on my book. And just having the accountability and that container, and also knowing you have the guidance and the assistance, I think for me has been really, really valuable and priceless. Because I never get to this point. I never got to this point where I felt like extremely stuck, because I always felt I could come and ask the questions and you would help me to get over to the next point. So that's been...
I love that. It's really, and there are studies that say when you're in a group and you have a mentor, the chances of you actually completing a project are so much higher. Because you're not doing it alone. You don't get as much opportunity to allow your mind to get in the way of saying, oh, I'll do it later, or oh, who am I to write a book, or going into a negative spiral.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think also, like what you said, like clarifying from the beginning, like what is your core promise and what is your intention with the book? I think that was very big for me as well, just clarifying that for myself and having that as my North Star for the book and saying, okay, I'm doing this because.
Yes.
And then,
if you were to give advice to anyone out there thinking, I really should write my book, they might have been sitting on it for a year, maybe it's a new idea, or maybe they think, well, in order to be recognized as an authority in my field, I need to write a book. What's one nugget of wisdom that you would share with them to get started?
I would have two. I think the clarity is a big one. Really focus on like, what is your motivation to write this book? Like, why do you want to write it? How, if you write it to establish your authority, how does it fit in with your business? Right. So the clarity, because I think once you have that clarity, that's your motivation that can pull you forward. And then the other one is accountability. Get somebody to be accountable to, whether it's a group or a person, setting yourself like weekly goals, setting yourself an overall goal. Because I think oftentimes we don't do like the backward calculation of, okay, I want to publish by then, what do I need to do before? It's like, oh, I'll just write and I'll publish when I'm done.
Yes.
But then being done, that can be so far out in the future that,
oh, I didn't get around to it this week, sorry, and then there's no measurement of the progress. You don't even notice. So that's one thing that we did, right? We looked at, okay, how long does it take you to write one chapter, and therefore what's realistic then to roll out for the publishing date. That's exactly. Very good advice. Clarity and accountability. I like that. So moving into more back into your area of expertise, what would be one tip that you would give a woman who is going into perimenopause, or maybe thinking, in a couple of years that's probably going to happen to me? what would you say to that woman?
I think I would say you are going through a huge life transition. don't, underestimate what that means for you on all levels, and be very kind and gentle with yourself, and get as much support as you can for your physical and emotional and mental well-being.
It's so true, because it really just surprises you, and you think, oh, just having a bad day, or I was the same. When I came into it, I was like, I had no, because my mom never talked about it. She never shared anything about it, right? And so I thought, oh, it's just a little, like exactly like you. It's just like going to be a little something. But the fact that there is this new, this identity a new identity that wants to be born. It's just such a precious time. And so I really value the work that you're doing with women to help us all step more deeply into our power and into who we truly are authentically. And I think that's a passion that we share. I'm all about, through the writing, let's help you crystallize your message and why you're here, why you do what you do, and why this is important to you. We didn't speak about this, why is menopause important to you, other than, well, that's what you've experienced and you want to pass that on, right? Yeah.
And
so where can people, go ahead.
No, I think it's funny, because for me it's the same thing. I never had a conversation with my mom about menopause, but looking back now, I know that she, for example, also struggled with insomnia. And I regret not having those conversations. And I had a conversation with my sister, because there is some hereditary there can be some hereditary similarities of how we experience this phase of our time. And I had a conversation with her, and that was really nice, of sharing our experiences and differences and similarities. And if that could just spark the conversations around women, because I think even amongst women, we're not talking about this as much, or not as much as we should or could. So if that sparks,
because it's a sign of many women see it as a sign of vulnerability, right? It has to be medicated away potentially, and we're no longer the strong woman that we were. That's capable, the superwoman that's capable of everything. Like, there's some weaknesses that's part of an identity shift, right? There's like a humility and a humbleness that is invited to come in.
Yeah. Or then when I of course now I'm having much more conversations with friends and women around me, and then sometimes you hear a lot of negative beliefs, like, oh, once you're in menopause, everything, basically life as a woman is over. So I thought, oh, that's also very interesting. Like, what are the ideas and the mindset we have about being a woman in that phase? Of course, our bodies are changing. Yep. Sorry.
Yeah, that's why I love your title so much, because it's got that beautiful play on words. Can you just share that one more time as we're wrapping up here?
It's called Wiser, Hotter, Stronger, Embracing the Heat and the Heart of Menopause.
Yes, so if you listening out there, you're looking to connect with Daniela and you want to get your hands on her book when it comes out, do get in touch with her so you can be put on the waiting list. And Daniela, where can people find you? Where can they reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm with my name, Daniela Schoch. That's my website domain, my Instagram handle, my Facebook handle, everywhere, just my name.
Beautiful. All right. So I encourage everybody to reach out to Daniela if you have any questions about menopause, or you're finding yourself in that space of an identity shift and thinking, well, who even am I? And if you're curious about writing a book because she's inspired you that, yes, it is time, then reach out to me and we can have a conversation and seeing what feels good, what feels alive, what is in alignment. And with that, thank you so much for being here, Daniela.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Until next time, it's Crystal Hille from Hille House